Okay, I suggest to start. Welcome everyone to the 10th community call dedicated to Atomica liquidation markets, which is the first ever non-custodial liquidity pool that programmatically participates in collateral liquidations of DeFi protocols. And our team is so excited about upcoming mainnet release. So yes, our efforts and time like almost entirely focused on making tests, fixing bugs to have like a successful release. This upcoming mainnet release also will be with limited access under early beta mode. So you can get access for the application in the same way, simply filling the form at website, and our team will provide the access. So basically, you can like become the first who easily profits from liquidations. And in first release, we will have one pool that accepts DAI and participates in liquidations of ETH. That will be the first release. So yes, our team right now is working on like final tests, so to have this mainnet release. And what questions would like to cover during this community call? I guess we can divide this in two parts. The first is to answer questions about upcoming mainnet release, if there are any, from community side, and the second part of the questions are from our team to understand the community needs, to set our priorities of building the next features accordingly to the community existing needs. And we want to hear your voice, so we will ask a few questions. Also, these questions will be available like in a video description, community calls recaps, and also these few simple questions will be in other Google form. So it's really important for us to hear your opinion. What next DeFi platform should we add? What other collaterals to liquidate should we add? And what about asset management? Meaning that what are your ideas, suggestions where the assets should be allocated in times of low volatility and low auctions amount to retain stable yield? So that's the basic agenda for today, and sure, we cannot limit ourselves to only this one questions, and surely if there are any other topics anyone would like to cover, feel free to suggest them and start if they are like significantly different from mentioned by me. So let's move to the first part, and it's questions from community side. So question is, are there any questions, comments, ideas, suggestions for upcoming release that will be soon? Any questions you have? Andrew asked about like audits. I can also like answer that question if and other any questions? Okay, I can start answering the question that Andrew asked before the records. of this video. I guess it's very important to make an accent of it. Yeah, unfortunately, at this like first limited release, we will not be having a smart contracts audit, but we are working on this. That's why we are making this release like, very limited to the closed community, elaborating on all potential risks directly at user interface. Also, we have a risk section and in our documentation. Also, we are limiting this first release to 25K of liquidity that could be supplied. It's not hard-coded, but still, for informational purpose, we are limiting this number to make sure that we ideally know our early users to make sure that everything is like safe and fine, and we can reach them in case of like any edge cases. But yeah, it's very important part, and we are working on this. That's the answer for your question, Andrew, that you asked before we started. Any other questions? Okay. Also, you still can provide your ideas. This video is recorded, and there will be a recap of this call. So basically, you can provide any your comments anywhere is comfortable for you, and in Telegram, email, which is comfortable for you. So then we can proceed to the questions we have. So I mentioned them briefly, and it would be interesting to hear the opinion. So in the current release, we will be liquidating just ETH, but considering new collaterals that are rising, if you have seen the recent posts from MakerDAO, currently there are two governance votes, if I'm not wrong, too, for adding new collaterals, TBTC and TUSD. So it's important to have multiple collaterals to liquidate. So the first question, how do you think what should have the first priority of adding new collaterals? Okay, I guess this is still open question, and you can provide answers in any form you want to get us aware, so we can adjust the priorities. But I guess we will see what like the current debt ceiling, what are like more important right now to add. Like for example, there is like less risk for USDC, right? So I guess it can have like less priority. The second question is Renat, you wanna add something or?
Well, I would like to yeah, as far as like priorities for collaterals, one thing that would be interesting to discuss is makers adding more collaterals every like week or two, right? And
yes.
Some of it might be offering much upside for LPs. Some may offer less. The question is this choice between multi-collateral pools versus single collateral pools. Basically, there are pros and cons. With single collateral pools, there is more transparency and like basically it's much simpler building block, right? Out of which you can probably compose a portfolio at the higher level, right? If the asset management passive income basically yield from peacetime lending of collateral is implemented, does it make sense to have the multi-collateral pools, or maybe it could be solved by a setting where allowance in the where basically I allow my pool to take assets from this wallet that otherwise deploys these funds to various lending protocols, and if there are liquidations, basically allow these three pools to draw on a first come first served basis, right? If there is a capital call issued, right, the funds are converted into DAI and go into this pool to participate in liquidation of, for example, Ether, right? So what are the pros and cons that you see with these two approaches? One is multi-collateral pools, that is by default is capital efficient. The second one is more allowance-based structure where the capital efficiency is achieved above the core protocol. What do you think are things that we should consider here, and how do we, what criteria do we use to compare these options, right?
I guess it's a good question, and I guess there can be more than just two options, like you mentioned. But as I personally think, I can start answering this. We can, considering that the first pool we launch is launched by Atomica team, we can add few more collaterals, like that are currently available at MCD, and it's not too complicated to do this right now. So to add like VPTC, CUSD, and BAT, which will be, I guess, good to have like more complex liquidation market. But with further collaterals, it will depend on okay, what I mean. So considering that the first pool is launched by our team, the next pool could be launched by other teams, projects, persons, yes, and it will depend on their primary goals, whether it's like to just have a backstop, to just have to seek yield, just to have this one, or just to have a collateral, single collateral where you have expertise at. So I guess it's good to have this flexibility, which you can choose by yourself when you're launching your market. You can choose like the collaterals you would like to liquidate. It could be one collateral, it could be several collaterals, or it could be like all collaterals and the future ones. I guess we can provide this opportunity and see what any specific entity wants. But in terms of the first pool, I guess it will be good to have like a few collaterals, and then it will depend on like market situation. Maybe this more robust asset manager thing is more efficient, capital efficient, so we can like stop adding new collaterals to the existing initial pools, and then to provide this for like community interests. So if anyone interested, one can launch it and see on market demands. But I guess I was clear, so that's my opinion. Maybe anyone has any other.
Yeah, I think flexibility is important because we don't know exactly all the use cases that people are going to want. So, to launch a pool with specific collaterals, I think being able to add more in the future is also important. I think that is the, I think just flexibility is worth it. People could want different use cases. So no reason to have it fixed. And more collaterals mean more, as more less correlated collaterals are added, then ideally the pool should perform better because you can participate in more markets. If adding more external collateral, it isn't just pure crypto native products, then hopefully those things the fluctuation in those prices will drive more participation, which will be good for pool contributors.
I like personally this approach. What you're not think or any other?
I can add that currently we can operate only with auctions which are with ETH collateral. So we don't have in backlog this feature to support multiple collaterals, but it's not a big deal because what we do with collateral, we just sell it on 1 inch. So if 1 inch can sell this collateral, we can add it. So technically, that's not a big problem.
Great.
Okay, and this comparison of the multi collateral as a liquidation, as an auction participation, right? That is being acquired in the auction or at a fixed discount. Comparing this with a single collateral, basically keeper, right? What are the pros and cons of having one that is more complicated versus another one of being more simpler, and this capital efficiency is achieved with composability? So basically, why not to have a very primitive pool with keeper, and that is only participant in this particular collateral, and compose the rest, the capital efficiency at the higher levels?
Then you gotta make decisions about like order of operations and whatnot. Like, I guess I don't see how that would function, because if you have different pools that are operating in different markets, you have to supply the capital at the point that they need it. I guess I don't really see how it's different if you have it automatic, where they could like pull from a central pool at the same time into their pool and then move it into the auction. How is that different? It just seems like an extra added step rather than just having one pool participating in multiple collateral types.
Yeah, and also it should be added that I don't see any big advantage of having one single pool related to USDC collateral liquidations or BAT, because they're not like very big liquidation markets if there exist separately. But also it doesn't mean that we should add everyone a collateral to the existing pool, but we can limit ourselves to having some basic one, like that I mentioned, like 4 of them, and then will depend on like, each specific needs. So I don't see any disadvantages that may be implied if we add few other collaterals to the current pool. What are the cons of it? I see only advantages. It's not like we are adding some heavy feature to it, but it makes it more complete and rational, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, well. Okay. Well, let's. How about we get the requirements for asset management first, right? And then see if we have any clear situation about it.
Okay. I can like provide the general question.
Yeah, because if the asset management requirement and potential use cases and example, wallet.
Breaking up for Nat.
Yeah, something wrong with your connection.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. There is one scenario where we can make it very simple, primitive, composable, single collateral pool structure. If our asset management requirements, use cases, and potential solution, for one of which is, for example, there is a wallet that on one side in peacetime deploys to various strategies to generate yield, right? And then when there is a wartime, allowance allows the pools where you are subscribed to draw on it, right? Then I can see that such solution would give this capital efficiency allocation, right? Where whichever pool became going to wartime first, it will draw on it, right? If there is anything remaining, the other pool will do. All other settings will be done basically from that perspective. But the downside, I guess, for the pool manager or whoever is administrating whether it's a DAO, us, or someone else managing the strategy, right? The bids and so on, right? It could mean that there are no guarantees that this capital calls will result in DAI for this particular guy if he's specializing, for example, let's say a market maker who is already active in WBTC, right, may not want to run a pool with all collaterals, or he basically is quite differentiated for this particular collateral, right? Letting them to deploy their capital, right, is important. Letting other people to deploy capital like LPs to these pools also important, right? Some people may want to pick only a few. Some people may want to pick in like multi-meta pool, right? I think it may work, but we need to first figure out, basically write down the requirements for asset management, right, for the peacetime deployment, and then see which solutions, how do they solve this particular problem, and if it's possible to implement the single collateral pools without loss of capital efficiencies and economies of scale and so on, I would be more in favor of much more like simplistic single collateral pools, basically.
So to boil down your request is that optimizing for users, liquidity providers to be able to hold yield generating instruments or other assets apart from DAI, at least in some capacity, to then be deployed when needed.
Yes.
Okay.
So as a liquidity provider, right, I would make a deposit into the Atomica contracts, right, a wallet, and I pinpoint, basically, I select the pools which I want to participate in during wartime, right?
Yeah.
Once,
yeah. I mean,
so I have a choice of whom I want. Like, it might be a backstop pool, it might be all collateral meta pool, or like even if I only can select single collateral pools, that's fine, right? As long as they're you know, it may not necessarily, like the collaterals being added now, not all of them have the same. The wartime will not be at the same time. For some, it will be this week.
We don't need to solve for that right now, because built into what is being deployed is the ability for other people to launch pools that, when we do support multiple collateral types, those pools will be able to manage which collateral types that they want to support. So for liquidity providers, they'll have a choice of whatever pool they want to put their assets in. So that's kind of beside the point. The point is, these pools will not always be actively participating in auctions. So obviously there is a benefit to allowing people to earn a yield or add other assets that they might want to have exposure to while these are not being used. So the options are, having just a fixed asset. So it's okay, well, this holds C DAI, and then for every bid, it just redeems C DAI for DAI, or it holds some ratio that's either static to have some available for bidding, or it's based on some other oracle that says, okay, we should maintain 20% in DAI, 80% in C DAI, or what have you. So that's at peacetime, wartime, etc. The other option is to have a whitelist, or just a generalist, either globally or per pool, that's managed by the pool manager group or DAO, that has approved assets that people can contribute. And then when those assets, when DAI is needed for bidding, either those assets are liquidated, or most likely, the idea would be, like, let's say people want to have ETH exposure in one pool, they just put in C ETH. So it has to be associated collateral to some protocols, whether it's Compound or Aave or what have you. And then the pools for bidding, instead of selling the assets, they just draw down from some debt. They create some debt against those deposits, take that DAI bid, and then ideally return capital with a positive return back to the pool. So that would be a more complicated feature, because we need to draw things down into DAI from all these pools pro rata, do some bidding, and then return that DAI with pro rata returns back, and then convert those assets from that DAI into C ETH or C DAI or what have you, to repay the debt. Or I guess you don't. Yeah, you're repaying the debt, and then any excess you are using to repurchase that asset, to maintain kind of like 100% in that pool. So ideally, people put in CETH and then get more CETH back out when they pull it out. So that would be an option, but yeah, that's definitely something that would take some work, because we'd have to have kind of that intermediary pool, some logic for deciding like, okay, how much debt should we pull now? Because I think, especially if there's like a high, the chain is clogged and there's high gas prices, like it might be difficult to get access to that liquidity to bid. Things are getting busy. So, I mean, we can think about what a phased kind of possible asset management, the options look like. One is just, okay, it holds CDI and then uses DI when needed. I think that's the easiest. We just like offer one option, another, and then as soon as you're giving people the ability to have like more of those and then hold other assets, it gets a little more complicated. Even like CDI to ADI, like, it's different returns, like thresholds. So like, you can't just like split up returns. Like the price of those, they're going to stay kind of in step, but they'll be a little different. So you can't necessarily just like split things evenly pro rata. There has to be kind of an intermediary pool where you're kind of going into DI, bidding, DI back out, redistributing.
Okay. All right. Well, let's revisit this topic when we have asset management use cases prioritized.
Yeah.
Then
another option is lobbying the protocols to allow for Atomica DI to be used as collateral and earn a yield. I guess people don't really have much of a need to borrow it, so I guess it wouldn't really drive yield. We kind of have to go the other way. All right, that doesn't really work.
Well, in order for, I like this route, right? At least the direction. Atomica DI used as a collateral to earn yield, that's fine, right? But the demand for, well, some of these markets like MCD, right? That is totally an option, right? We apply and we use a pool to protect it, right? But the markets like Aave, right, or Compound, I mean, Aave would be an example, but that's kind of like increases the number of steps, right? If I can use Atomica DI or Atomica pool tokens to be used as collateral there, right? It means I need to borrow against it, and then earn the fees, right? I was describing or considering a situation where I just would like to deposit any major token into Atomica, right? And it earns yield whatever our money markets are offering, right? And when there is a wartime, then conversion happens, and then it is deployed. Once it's did its job, right, generate yield, it goes back into whatever I had. It doesn't have to go back automatically, like complete the cycle, but it needs to become back available for me to generate yield. So,
yeah, I like the idea of the allowing like basically any deposit token from like Aave or Compound or whatever, to allow those to be used as assets for liquidation markets, with the idea that you can take out a loan. We draw down debt against them. I guess the question is like making sure that like, you don't want to get kind of liquidated as that's happening. So like that, you can only draw down at like a very generous, maybe it'd have to be per asset, like a very generous debt, so only pull down like 50% of available ETH deposited, draw down that DI, because the idea is you're using it and then within a couple hours you're returning it. But the idea, the question is like, how does that logic work for when do you draw down? How much do you draw down? How do you pay it back? When do you pay it back?
Yeah, got it. So from this perspective, this the custody wallet solutions like Safe make a lot of sense because these apps will become available, like an app that that upon request, right? If you set allowance, right, it will take your ETH, right? Mint DAI on that ETH from Maker, right? And funnel that DAI into a pool. And we don't have to build all of these apps that are being built by those developers, most of whom are third party. So, all right, that's cool. What else on this call that we should cover?
Well, as I mentioned, there also was a question about like as manager you started, and we discussed it. And also I wanted to cover like what like assets could be considered next to accept in the pool. But we also covered this topic. So from my side, there are no any other questions. If you guys have any questions, you can ask them if you would like to cover any other topic. If there are,
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was thinking about other collateral types. Forgive me, my breathing just arrived in. If you take another type of collateral, I guess you're supposed to show your track record in that type of collateral as well. And that creates some problems. For example, if you have, John was talking about uncorrelated types of collateral. I have a question to John first. Do you know of such a collateral that is uncorrelated? Because crypto is totally correlated.
Yeah, no, this is more like the looking forward. Like if you look at some of the current like threads in the Maker, like that are people are, I guess there's like a poll to see what the interest is and possibly adding new tokens to this Maker collateral. There's like these like the Centrifuge project with their drop token that I agree will have probably, at least at the beginning, some more of a correlation as people are kind of figuring out how to value it to regular crypto assets. Because yeah, Bitcoin, BAT, all that stuff is highly correlated. But if these projects that are trying to tie tokens to physical assets are are actually successful in doing what they're attempting to do, the price of that asset should not be correlated to Bitcoin and ETH. It should be correlated to the creditworthiness of like the shipping receipts, or I guess the first other one they're listing is like Spotify payment receipts. What is the creditworthiness of those contracts and the safety of the platform that issued the asset? It shouldn't be correlated to Bitcoin and ETH. But yeah, everything's correlated now that is currently in there. I agree.
Okay, the second question is if you show your track record in DAI or USDC or whatever type of dollar equivalent, and say, for example, the crypto starts to move up, and if one person holds his assets in ETH or Bitcoin, and it goes up, say 20% a year, or 20% a month, and another person puts his assets into DAI and into Atomica keeper pool and makes the same 20% monthly. Do you get my point? If crypto starts, oh.
Yeah, so if crypto starts moving up, so we are both liquidity.
If you're going to accept other types of collateral, you're also supposed to show the return in the same collateral.
I guess why?
Do you get my point?
So are you saying accept collateral into the liquidity pools, or collateral as in collateral we support on Maker for liquidations?
Well, I don't think it doesn't make any difference. My question is, are you going to accept other types of collateral just for the sake of convenience, or are you going to use it as a base currency, as a base, or as a quote currency, in terms of showing the profit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think the ideal situation is that people can kind of contribute whatever asset they want, as long as it's, you know, a liquid asset that is in, you know, part of whatever the whitelist is for that pool. You know, maybe some pools, they only want DAI in there because they want it to be very secure and not have like these other machinations around it. But if you want to have an open pool where people can put in, you know, ETH or WBTC or some other asset, because that's just how they want to hold their value. In those situations, I think for each of those contributions, yeah, we'd probably have to show returns that way. But the way I would see it is that where returns are coming from are these pockets of time where we are drawing down some DAI into a pool, participating in auctions, and then pulling it back out, back into those assets. So it's like almost these like, you know, certain periods of time where you can show the return that happened, you know, during those events. So it might be more event-based return, and you could show, I think, yeah, you would kind of at that point have to show like you're selecting like, you know, what has been my return in Bitcoin, but the idea would be your return in WBTC would be like, because, you know, DAI was borrowed, you know, used to liquidate whatever, that collateral was then sold for ideally more DAI, then that DAI was returned to the pool to pay back the debt, but also buy more WBTC on the market. So now you have a WBTC based return. And I think that's all that would be important to show. And ideally that would be somewhat even across various assets. And then, you know, asset prices themselves would be kind of secondary. And does that answer the question?
Yeah, no more questions, John. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, if there are no any other questions, then thanks everyone for your time, for your interest and participation. We are working on like mainnet release, upcoming release. So stay updated. We will notify you as soon we will release. So thank you.